Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1687A, and today's date is October 11th, 2018, and the title of the episode is Rates Raised, Market Drops, Who's in the Kill Box? Coincidence? Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we are starting to see the plan take shape, and when I say the plan, I'm not just talking about going after the deep state. I'm talking about the entire plan. And the other side of the plan is getting rid of the central bank. And we've been talking about this for quite a while. Q really doesn't mention the Federal Reserve or the central banking system and pretty much stays quiet about it. But this is part of the plan, and we can see what Trump is doing right now. Now, we know that U.S. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, he's out there warning China not to engage in a competitive devaluation of its currency. And Christine Lagarde, who is the International Monetary Fund chief, came out and dismissed the idea that China is manipulating its currency to gain a competitive advantage, giving verbal support to Beijing as the U.S. continually says, no, China is doing this. And of course, Christine Lagarde is out there saying, well, the reason why it looks like this is because the dollar is very strong. And we see that this is really all part of the plan. Now, Trump was out there saying that, yes, China is manipulating their currency. But we see something very interesting happening. If we start to put all of this together, we can start to see the picture of what Trump and the Patriots are trying to do here. I mean, let's start from the beginning here. In the beginning, Trump came into office and he was going to drain the swamp, get rid of the deep state, put the rule of law back, and help the economy. And as we can see throughout time, he's removed a lot of the globalist trade deals, gave the U.S. a buffer area where he can go ahead and try to bring back manufacturing and prep the United States for this transition. And this transition is a transition away from the central banking system. That's really what it's all about. And he started to contradict the Fed. Now, of course, he placed Powell into the Fed head position. So we have Powell in there. Yellen is out. And he did the same thing with Jeff Sessions. He put Jeff Sessions into the position. And we can see that he's using pretty much the same strategy, where with Jeff Sessions, as we know, he continually says, God, I wish I had a really good attorney general. I wish he would do more. I'm very disappointed in Jeff Sessions. Now, the reason why Trump was doing that was to get everyone to side with Jeff Sessions. So when the hammer came down, and when it does come down, they can't go back and say, well, we don't want Jeff Sessions now, because the entire time they did the opposite of what Trump was saying. Now, let's look at the central bank. Trump right now is contradicting the central bank on rates. Now, when he placed Powell into this position, the first thing he pretty much said was, I thought this was going to be an easy money Fed. Well, do you really think he placed this person in this position without knowing what Powell was going to do? Of course he did. He knew that this wasn't going to be an easy money Fed. He knew that this was going to be a rate Fed because they had it planned. They know how to bring down the system. It's not really a secret. If you go back in time and look throughout history, you can see every time the Fed raises its rates, everything starts to fall apart. And this time, since the recovery, the whole thing is one gigantic illusion. The interest rates were suppressed and manipulated down. This isn't an open and free market where interest rates find their position, where the stock market finds where it should be and companies go out of business. No, this is one gigantic manipulation. So Trump is out there, and he is saying that the Fed is making a big mistake by being too aggressive. He said the Fed is getting a bit too cute. Now, this is very interesting, and he's continually contradicting or blaming the Fed for what is happening. So Trump decided, you know something, let me clarify what I was talking about. And he came out and said, listen, I'm not going to fire Powell. He doesn't want to fire him. I mean, a lot of people think because he's talking like this that he's going to fire Powell and Powell's going to be next. This is what the mainstream media, the deep state, this is what they keep saying. Just like with Rod Rosenstein. He keeps saying, I don't want to fire him. But the mainstream media is saying, ooh, Rod Rosenstein's next. Trump will fire him. They're starting to do this with Powell now. And he said, I'm not going to fire him. He says that the Fed is being too aggressive with these interest rate hikes. He said, I'm not angry with the Fed chief, he said. I'm disappointed. Wasn't he disappointed with Sessions? Absolutely. So let's start to look at the strategy right now. So in the last day or two, we've seen the market come down. Now remember, Trump has the magic wand. He knows how everything works, how everything is manipulated. It's not a secret. They know all, they have it all. And when the market was dropping, Trump said, it's a correction that I think is caused by the Federal Reserve. Because he was asked about the markets, and he blamed the correction on the Federal Reserve. Very interesting. He said, I think the Fed is far too stringent, and they're making a mistake. And when he was talking about the dollar, Trump sounded less than enthusiastic about the dollar's strength so far this year, saying that, frankly, the strong dollar doesn't necessarily mean all good. That's very interesting. So, while he was saying all this about Powell and the Fed, the IMF came out and defended the Fed. Now, in our last couple of reports, the IMF wasn't defending the Fed. The IMF was going after the Fed, saying raising these rates are hurting the emerging markets, and it will disrupt the global economy. Now, since Trump is saying he doesn't like Powell, doesn't like the Fed, the IMF is out there and it's praising the Fed. The Fed is doing a great job. Actually, the head of the International Monetary Fund, Christine Lagarde, defended the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, and she said the following: I wouldn't associate Jay Powell with craziness. He comes across, and members of his board, as extremely serious, solid, and certainly keen to base their decisions on actual information. Now, this is very interesting. Now, the IMF is supporting the Fed and supporting Jerome Powell. That's very interesting. So let's look at this. Back in July, Trump started to criticize the Fed. The mainstream media was all over it. And then, once again, when the Fed raised its rates, he criticized the raising of the rates, saying, I don't think this is a good time for this. We have debt coming soon. Then the market drops, and he blames the Fed. I mean, is this a coincidence? No, this is not a coincidence. This is planned. So think about what he's doing right now. He's going after Powell and the Fed, mostly the Fed. Powell is his agent inside doing the work that he wants. Now he has the mainstream media backing the Fed. No, the Fed's doing a fantastic job. Let them do what they need to do. Christine Lagarde now is defending the Fed, saying that he's not crazy. This is a good thing. He's raising the rates. He knows what he's doing. He's a serious guy. So the IMF is backing the Fed. The mainstream media is backing the Fed. The deep state system is backing the Fed. Why? Because that's where they get their source of funding. It's a corrupt system. So when the system collapses, the whole thing falls apart. What's going to happen here? Trump is going to turn around and say, listen, I told you, raising the rates is not a good thing. I even said the market was affected by the Fed when they increased the rates. And going back in time, he's going to say, look, I said this. They're the ones who are responsible for this. And look who defended them and who supported them, who said they were doing a great job. The IMF, the mainstream media. They came out and said, no, they know what they're doing. The Fed knows what it's doing. It's okay. So who's responsible for this system collapsing? The mainstream media backing the Fed, the IMF backing the Fed, and the Fed is to blame for this collapse. Now, again, as they raise rates once again, we're going to hear Trump contradict the Fed again and again and again to get his message across, to build this up so everyone is defending the Fed. And when the system comes down, Trump will go back in time and say, I said the Fed was responsible for this, for this, for this, for this, for this, and then the economy collapsed. Look at my economy. We had the best GDP, unemployment the lowest, manufacturing was coming back, and look what the Fed did. And the IMF supported this. The mainstream media supported this. See the plan now? See what he's doing? And we're going to see more of this. Actually, right now, we see that Turkey is making a big move. Now, we need to go back a little bit. Remember, Russia has been telling every single country to use its national currency. Don't use a centralized currency. Use your own currency, the people's currency. Take control of your central bank. Actually, this is what Putin did. He took control of the central bank. I think eventually what's going to happen is Trump and the Patriots, they are going to take control of the central bank. But Turkey right now, and this is coming from Erdogan, he announced that Turkey has closed the chapter of IMF credits. They've realized that the IMF puts them into debt, makes the economy worse off than it really is. And they will shift using non-dollar trade. They're going to be using their national currencies. And we're going to see a lot of countries do this. Russia, China, Turkey, Iran, India, Syria, Brazil, Venezuela, South Africa, you name it. The African nations within Africa, they're all going to start to do this. They're all pulling away very quietly. This is the transition. And before you know it, when this whole thing starts to fall apart, and we can see it falling apart right now, everyone is going to be shocked and surprised in what happened, because everyone has been kept in this illusion. Now think about it. Since Trump is criticizing the Fed, continually saying that the Fed is responsible for the market dropping, the Fed is responsible because they're raising rates, what do you think the next step is? The next step is to audit the Fed, to show the world what the central bank has been doing this entire time. And believe me, when the system comes down, I mean, talk about timing. When the system comes down, this will be the best time to rally Congress to say, you know something? We need to audit the Fed. We need to find out what they're doing, because look at the system now. Look what they've done with raising these rates. And guess what? There will be a rally call. There will be a call like we've never heard before to go after the Fed. And this is going to be the perfect time to do it. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.